surprise to anybody that knows me that I grew up in a family of talkers. My father was a talker. Some of you knew him. A raconteur, great storyteller, wonderfully engaging, charming man. And he could wax, he could wax in a lengthy way on just about any subject. And at our supper table, he would purposely lay a topic out, and Lang and Francis and me and Dennis, when he came along 8 years later, would deliberate that topic. We would share our ignorance. It wouldn't matter if we knew what we were talking about. That didn't deter us from our long excursuses on these topics. Some of you might be thinking that feature has stuck with me in my preaching to this very day. When I married Jana and took Chad and Cliff and Chris Ann back to Alabama to meet my family, the Corleys, who are not quite as verbose as the Johnsons, Chris Ann noticed that, goodness, we talked all the time, talked over each other, just talk. She came back home, and at our supper table, she offered to Jana, and she said, "Mom, Charlie's family talks all the time. My family, we don't talk much. Me, I'm the perfect balance between the two." I'm a debater, you know that. I have a point of view. I generally am not shy about espousing it. A very important person in our national life, in fact, without giving you too much specificity, a former cabinet member of the President of the United States told me not long ago, "You talk all the time, you don't listen. You need to listen more. You need to shut your mouth and listen more." I'm quite sure that's accurate. I get to practice that as a pastor. This is what pastors should do. I don't always pass that test. Sometimes I fail that test. Those of you who have been in academic culture know that to debate a teacher about a grade is a fruitless thing. I've done that on several occasions, particularly in seminary life. And as I said in early service, debating a theologian in a graduate program is a very daunting thing to do. You better have your act together. You better know what you're talking about if you're going to debate a learned scholar about an article of theology. Two particular episodes come to my mind. I remember translating the book of Philippians for David Garland, who was my professor of New Testament at Southern Seminary, went on to be founding dean, wasn't founding dean, but dean of the seminary at Baylor, Truett Seminary, and then became president of Baylor University. I was sure I was right about this particular article of translation of Paul's epistle to the Philippians. And I went to David, made an appointment. I argued and argued and argued. He shook his head. "I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it." Then he said, "Write it up for me." I wrote it up in yet another paper. I submitted it to him. He said, "Give me several days." He sent the paper back, and he changed my grade from a B to an A, and he addressed me, "Dear Grade Grubber Johnson." The second instance that I remember is with Glenn Stassen, my wonderful, beloved professor whose impact on me exists to this day, maybe more so today than even 40 plus years ago. Goodness, 45 years ago when I had Glenn. He's passed on now. He had cancer way too early in his 60s. The New York Times has a marvelous long obituary of my of my beloved teacher, Glenn Stassen. I invite you to look it up. Glenn invited me and Chuck Rush as lowly master's students, Masters of Divinity students, to join his doctoral seminar in the theology of Reinhold Niebuhr. The whole grade was based on a 25-page paper that we wrote at the end of the term. We had to read every single thing that Reinhold Niebuhr, one of the most prominent theologians of the 20th century, wrote. We joined that class. Those of you who have done doctoral work, and my experience in higher education is very minimal, let me hasten to add. But you know that a doctoral seminar, you sit in a circle and you share your own research. It is very important to any supervisor leading doctoral studies in the life of our church. We have a number of PhDs. I think I've said before, by the way, that one of the great things, beautiful, positive things that struck me about this church early on is we have more doctorates per capita than any congregation in Texas, but everybody wanted to be addressed by their first name, not by their title. I loved that about this radically egalitarian, inclusive church, Second Baptist Church of Lubbock, and that exists to this day. But you know that each student is called upon to do his or her own individual research and make a point, to argue a point of view in a doctoral seminar. The whole point of doctoral work is to explore new research that has never been done before. So it was a big thing for a master's level student to be invited, particularly at my seminary, Southern Seminary. John Claypool used to comment that Southern was more a community of grades than grace, and he was right about that. And so I joined that doctoral seminar, and the reading load was just impossible. I managed to do about half of it, but that didn't deter me from commenting. And so every week when the doctoral seminar would meet, I would share my ignorance. And long about the third or fourth week, the doctoral students ganged up on me and said, just be quiet. You don't know what you're talking about. Just listen, shut your mouth, and we'll share our wisdom with you. Glenn had made the point quite strenuously that if you turn your paper in late, you would be failed for the class. The whole grade rested on a 25-page paper at the end of the term, and I turned my paper in 3 days late. I went to Glenn. He said, Charlie, you know the rule. I have to fail you for the class. I said, Glenn, please just read my paper. And he said, okay. I got the paper back with the impossible grade of an A++. This is my shining moment in higher education. With a fixed note, Charlie, I should be penalizing you for tardiness, but instead I'm rewarding you for brilliance. I love that. I zero-copied his notes on my paper, and I sent it to every doctoral student in that seminar because I won the debate. Chuck, my dear friend Chuck Rush, some of you know Chuck, he was best man in my wedding, went on to do doctoral work at Princeton. He loves telling the story that Glenn wrote on his paper, see Charlie Johnston for the correct interpretation of Reinhold Niebuhr. Thank you for bearing with me in that anecdote. We have a story in the Gospels today about a woman who strenuously debates Jesus, and I'm going to set it up for you because Jesus loses the debate. And we're in this room because Jesus loses the debate. This is a very pivotal story in the Gospels. So please, I invite you to listen. Jesus comes in the prophetic tradition to turn the people of Israel back to God. He comes to the people of Israel. His project is to address the people of Israel. And here we have a woman who's not a member of the tribe of Israel or the nation of Israel. She's a foreigner. She's a woman. She's a Gentile. She's a foreigner. She is marginalized in every way. And the writer of the Gospel of Mark outlines the marginalization of this woman. She has no standing, no status, no leg to stand on. She's got a little girl who's sick. She seeks Jesus out, and she asks Jesus to heal her daughter. And Jesus says this, I have come to feed the children, meaning the children of Israel. Jesus is an Israelite prophet. He speaks in the synagogues. Let me remind you of what a synagogue is. A synagogue is 12 Jewish men. And the Gentiles had to be in the court of the Gentiles, which means they could not come into the synagogue. They had to stay out in the courtyard with the women and the children and the foreigners and the God-fearers. They were geographically, physically marginalized from the people in the very presence of God. And the woman, this foreigner, this ostracized individual, has the temerity to debate Jesus. And she says, even the dogs get the crumbs that fall from the children's table. Jesus says, let the children be fed first. It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Because of that word, logos, the woman's daughter is healed immediately. The woman goes home and the little girl's lying on the bed and delivered of the unclean spirit. The only reason I have to stand before you, the only authority any pastor has to stand before you, is because of your debate with God. I told my Sunday school class, we're not automatons, we're not potted plants. We are free, active agents in our faith. And you don't have a Sunday school teacher or a pastor getting up and giving you some kind of computer program about how to think and what to believe. You wrestle with God, just like Jacob of old. You are in a rigorous, passionate, interactive, intersubjective relationship with God. And the pastoral authority of your spiritual leader grows as he or she walks with you through all your struggle, all your pain, all your debate with the Holy One. Jesus loses this debate because he realizes that his project of agape love is not just for the people of Israel, it is for the whole world. It's for the Gentile as well as the Jew. Paul didn't make it up, y'all. He took his cues from his leader, who knew that God's love was for everybody, that this was a center with no circumference. We come to this table one more time, and this food is for everybody. And everybody means everybody. There's no one left off of the invitation list to this meal. I don't know who you are, but I bet in a congregation this size, there's somebody thinking, not for me, surely not for me. Jesus lost the debate 2,000 years ago, and you're going to lose it today. Because this food's for you. This isn't the champagne of a victory celebration, like the winner of the World Series in the locker room, popping corks. This is medicine for weary, sick souls. And the only fitness God ever requires, it's not creedal, it's not theological. The only fitness God ever requires is to feel the need for God. You don't have to eat the crumbs. This is the full course for you. So I invite you. We don't own this table. I don't own it. This church doesn't own it. Baptists don't own it. Whosoever will may come. Oh God, let your church deliver that message. And then we will all be open. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.